Have you ever seen a video of someone bringing up an art rule, say color for instance, and they show when you can break that rule? Some are more aggressive about it, going, so far as to say F art rules. For some, it helps release them from the confines of believing that they have to do things a strict way and they feel free, which is great. But it might also cause confusion for others because if you aren't supposed to listen to rules, then what do you need to learn? Instead, I want to try to bring up a different mindset. Instead of saying screw out rules and do what you want, let's just not call them rules. I prefer the term art fundamentals and art principles because rules makes it feel like something more strict than it really is. Fundamental means it's like a building block. But you don't need to adhere to that block. You can stack them next to each other to create a building, or you can cut away to make a sculpture. So I'm going to throw down some art fundamentals. Most commonly, when you look up stuff like this, you'll get gesture, value, color, composition, perspective, balance, shading, form, anatomy, design and shapes, line work, brush work, proportions, edges, environments, etc. Now, before you start freaking out and thinking, I need to know all of this, that's the thing. It's just information. You can pick and pull. Let me explain. Some artists use the term artistic tool belt, and I really like it. Because if you're trying to nail something into the wall, and you have a hammer, a screwdriver, and a fork, what tool do you use? Exactly, you use the hammer. That is the most effective tool for that job. So then also, there are art tools that are best effective for different artists and their job. Let's pick a scenario. Say you want to be able to draw faces, just like a portrait artist or something. What would you need for that? Well, you'd need knowledge of anatomy, first and foremost. Then you'd need to know proportions of that anatomy, so we'll toss that in too. If you want to draw stylized or cartoony faces, for example, then you need to know design and shapes. This is picking and creating shapes that are pleasing to look at. And you need value to render the face, color if you want to add life, and form so you understand the three-dimensionality of it. These are just some basics. You can add more or less as you go along, but I think this is a good starting point. Let's try another scenario. Say a concept artist. Well, you need to be good at rendering, value, color, perspective, shape and design, proportion, anatomy, gesture. You'd also need to have a wider visual library and be able to mash two things together or just create something new. So, having good creativity. You notice how that's a lot more tools than the other artists? That's because they have different needs, so they have different tools for those needs. Here's one that's the most simple. Abstract art. All you need for this is value and color. There are certain art fundamentals that come up almost all the time because of how common they are. Perspective, balance, color theory, value, composition, form, shading, etc. These are so common that it will do you a great deal of good to learn them, but it depends on your needs. One last thing, I'm also a comic artist, although I don't work on it as much as I should be working on it. And that has its own set of fundamentals. Storytelling, dialogue, panels, pacing, inking, coloring, but specifically in a way that supports the story with lighting and maybe a specific color that ties to a theme. Also, you have to be good at writing, and that's a fundamental outside of art. One great way to pick these tools up naturally is through a project. I started a comic 5 years ago just because I wanted to write a story. Stories are what I was always driven towards as a kid. So I went along and I had to pick up tools and I had to learn on the go. Oh, my faces don't work. Well, let's look at anatomy. My anatomy's too stiff. Well, let's look at gesture. Color isn't right. Let's look that up. Things don't look 3D, perspective and form. and I improved as I ran into those problems. As a predominantly self-taught artist, this is how I figured things out. Now, you don't need a big project. It's often recommended to start with smaller projects and kind of work your way up. It can be whatever you want, so long as you want to do it. Maybe it's something like, if you want to be a portrait artist, for example, I want to set a goal of drawing 10 faces. Don't be afraid to fail. Go into each drawing with a happy curiosity. Go for what makes you feel thrilled to draw. Is it faces? Is it splotches of color that reveal a feeling? Is it highly detailed sketches that you don't even really like painting? That's for you to find out on your own journey. Every time you see a new artist that you love the artwork of, don't just go, oh, they're better than me. What is it about it that you like? As you dive into that, it leads you down the path with the list of art principles you need to achieve that goal. So instead of art rules, think art tools. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.